In a word, they think it's a terrible idea. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Pardoning for the January 6th protesters. Oppose it. 64%, about two-thirds of Americans oppose it. Just 30% favor it. And more than that, this Ipsos poll asked, should he prioritize it to be like the first thing he does when he gets into office? Just 1% say it should be Trump's top priority. So in a word, it's a terrible, terrible idea. I guess that's two words, and then idea is a third word in there, for Trump to pardon the January 6th protesters. Even among Republicans, it's only a slight majority. Of course, usually Trump gets, 80, 90% among Republicans. In this case, he's getting less than 60% on the idea of pardoning the January 6th protesters. So no, voters really dislike it. How about this? Americans strongly dislike the idea of these pardons for the January 6th protesters.
Yeah, when you see numbers like this, it's not just on party lines here. There's sort of bipartisan condemnation of the idea. Why?
Why? Well, what's a word to describe the January 6th protesters? Patriotism. Patriotism comes in at just 33%. I think a lot of those who want those folks to be pardoned believe that they were patriotic in their actions on January 6th, 2021. But voters don't see it that way. How about insurrection, which is a word a lot who don't like the January 6th protesters say? Insurrection, 53%. The majority say that the actions on January 6th was, in fact, an insurrection. So the idea that there's opposition to pardoning them makes a whole heck of a lot of sense when the fact is most folks opposed the actions of the January 6th protesters, and most of them thought that they were taking part in insurrection, which, John, is a very, very strong word. And yet the majority of Americans here, 53%, say that is a word to describe the January 6th protesters.
Yeah, and when you look at this when you look at it right here, you still see 64% oppose it. How then did Donald Trump get elected?
Yeah, this is, I think, the most interesting little nugget here, right? Which is Donald Trump tells you what he's going to do, and then he goes ahead and does it. So take a look here, which was, will Trump try and pardon the January 6th protesters? This was a poll that was taken before the election, and the vast majority of voters believed that he would. 81% said that he would try and pardon most of them. Just 19% said no, he would not. And of course, this 81% includes folks who are opposed to the idea of pardoning those January 6th protesters, yet they still voted for Donald Trump. I think what's going on here, John, is pretty simple, which is folks knew he was going to do it, and they just really didn't care all that much. Yes, they were opposed, but it was low down on these sort of list of important issues for them. There were issues that were more important. The economy, for instance, was more important. The idea, essentially, that Joe Biden's approval rating was only about 40%. Most voters thought the country was going in the wrong direction. So they were willing to look past some of the actions that they thought that Donald Trump would do in office, actions that they didn't like, for the things that they thought that he would do that they would like. And so they were willing to vote for him, even though they didn't like the idea and they thought he was going to do it anyway.
That's just an interesting number. 81% thought he would do it, 64% opposed it. What that tells you, people just didn't care.
People just didn't care. Donald Trump does a lot of things voters don't like, and they just don't care. And I think Trump knew that, and that's why he said it.
Or at least not enough to make that decision in the polls. All right, Harry, and thank you very much.